put a nail or a hammer on my head the next time I take a moody guy. Take positive, upbeat guys, and then we can work on their basketball.
Welcome to the Jamodi Podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is Jamodi, just a matter of doing it. Today we are joined by the head men's basketball coach at Oklahoma Baptist University, Jason Eaker. Coach Eaker is in his sixth season at OBU and has a career record of 87 wins and 54 losses. He was an assistant coach at Liberty from 2007 to 2013 and Mercer from 2013 to 2018. Coach Eaker has led the Bisons to winning seasons 4 out of the last 5 years. His teams has made 2 national tournament appearances, 5 consecutive GAC tournament appearances, and has 13 all-GAC selections. In his coaching career, Coach Eaker's players have made 30 all-conference selections. He was named GAC Coach of the Year in 2021. Before we hear from Coach, take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and follow us on social media at Jamodi Podcast. Coach, at first, I want to thank you so much for giving up your time and creating a little bit of a friendship with you at your gym a few weeks ago at your workouts. I was really impressed with how you took the 100 athletes or so through workouts, used your players and what you're teaching them. It was more about life, I felt like, than even just basketball, even though the basketball part was good. And so just blown away that you'd give up your time. Really appreciate it.
Well, it's great to be here with you. I remember, not only do I remember you as a player, I remember the uniforms that you guys had, and I felt like there was a difference between Coach Bliss's uniforms and Coach Drew's uniforms. The uniforms, like your sophomore year, I felt like you guys were really doing the baggy shorts. Your shorts were like you're six. What are you, 6'4"?
I'm 6'3". Those shorts and jersey, they weighed a ton.
They were baggy.
And they were baggy. I already didn't feel like I looked athletic playing. That just made me look that much worse. And so I did not appreciate that. That era was not for me, shorts wise.
No, you would fit. That was good for me because my body, I don't, not to sound inappropriate, but you're way more good looking than I am.
Coach. It's funny about the jerseys my senior year is. So we were Converse early on with Bliss. Then we went to Reebok, and Reebok was still somewhat okay. And I think we even went with Adidas then. Like we were constantly bouncing, but then Coach Drew came, and we went with some off-brand, like foreign brand. And
you did do that.
They were nicer, they were lighter, but they didn't have our names on the back. And I was in a weird headspace with everything that had happened. And I remember thinking, what kind of a D1 program are we where we don't even have a real sponsor? They don't even have our names on the back. Like it just kind of everything was spiraling for me out of control, and that didn't help.
Yeah, I remember that time. I was at Hardin Simmons. I started out at OBU. I was at Hardin Simmons. We played you guys. It was either my first or second time ever playing against a Division I team, and it was my parents drove all the way to Waco when we played you guys. And then when I was at Pan Am, I was at Texas Pan Am with Coach Hoffman, and then OU with Coach Sampson. And I think the year we were at OU was the year that you guys didn't get to play non-conference.
Yeah,
and the year I was at Pan Am, we beat. So
you beat us. Yeah.
Before I got to Pan Am, one of Coach's best wins was Texas Pan Am played Lawrence Roberts and all you guys in the San Juan, Puerto Rico shootout. And I don't know if you were on the team.
I was.
But they had Myrie Chapman and I think Brian Merriweather. My boss here at OBU who hired me was the associate head coach of that game. And so they made the players plaques after the season because they're not in a conference. They didn't get to play. Now they're in a conference, but they didn't get to play in a conference. So all the games that they had or the wins, that's their postseason.
Wow.
And so that tournament that they played you guys in was the closest thing that they got to the NCAA tournament. And if my recollection is correct, I think it was Pan Am, Baylor in the championship, and I think Pan Am won that game.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah.
right?
I think so. I definitely know that my senior year, we were looking for any wins that we could, and it was a competitive game. And one of your guys,
We
he
won at
got
the
he
end, I
he
think.
got at the buzzer. He got caught at the free throw line in an awkward spot and just like scoop shot. Like it was like a scoop shot from 15 feet that should
Yeah.
never go in, and it did. And big win for you guys, but even more of a punch in the gut for us because not only
Yeah,
is
because
everything
we're
going
Division
bad.
One. Yeah, we're Division One independent, and I'll tell you what, our team ended up losing 10 straight that year, and I think we finished on a 10 or 11 game winning streak. We beat Air Force when they were ranked, but during that time, I think you guys might have been our last win for almost 2 months, and so we coach put a lot of pressure on our team because we knew that you guys were undermanned, and we're like, hey, this is an opportunity. And you normally don't play a Big 12 school and they're decimated.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so you guys, you know, normally the Baylors or the OUs or the Texases would have way more talent than the Texas Pan Am, but our roster was deeper, we were bigger, we were more talented than you guys for that particular game, not in the San Juan shootout when you guys had all those studs, but by that time all those guys had gone to Texas and
yeah. They
Oklahoma
all
State.
left. Yeah,
They had all left, and it was you, and that's kind of the genesis of that book that you guys wrote, right? The Leftovers.
yeah.
Isn't that season
That's
like?
it. And
That's
coach,
probably why you remember that game.
I want everybody to know that I did not ask you to bring that up, and you're not a sponsor of the book. But yeah, I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, that is what the leftovers is about. Is the senior year we had 6 scholarship players.
Was that your senior year? The
Yeah.
year when we played you guys?
Yep. Yeah. When Drew
Oh,
came and we had 6 guys, it was me, 3 seniors, 3 or 4. And we actually fluctuated scholarship because we lost a guy halfway through. And
yeah.
and then we had a bunch of walk-ons, and Coach Drew was 32 years old and just trying to piece it
Wow.
together. And
Coach Driscoll was there from North
Driscoll,
Florida.
Coach Mills, Coach Tang, like that
Coach
whole crew. Moorfield, yeah, and it was before
Coach Patterson there
McCaslin.
yet?
Not yet, not yet,
Coach
not
Patterson
yet.
wasn't there, and
No.
then was Coach Mahoney there?
Coach Mahone. No, he came later too. Yeah, he
Okay,
came
because I've
later.
heard through all my affiliations with Athletes in Action, I've gotten to meet all those other guys, and we've had some of the Baylor guys come on some Athletes in Action trips.
Yeah.
But I've heard great things about Coach. I think I'm saying his name correctly, Coach Mahoney. I've
Yeah,
heard
yeah, he's awesome. Yeah.
he's impacted a lot of players
Yeah.
for Christ, and just they used to always the players that I gotten to know over the years from Baylor would say that they loved going by his office.
The Jamodi podcast is powered by Sideline Interactive. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for high-quality, innovative scoring tables and LED video display boards that help coaches and schools bring more excitement to fans, create huge fundraising opportunities, and make their jobs easier. Visit sidelineinteractive.com to check out their amazing products.
That was a fun trip down memory lane. I do want to talk a little bit about you and your coaching style, philosophy, and program. And like I said, it was really fun getting to be at that elite camp and just be an observer and sit and watch. One of the phrases you kept saying over and over to the guys, and you actually had them repeat it quite a bit, which I like that. I think when they repeat things, it tends to stick a little bit more. But you kept saying the little things are the big things. The little things are the big things. And I have seen over the years, I think where coaches get in trouble is when they don't focus on those details or they don't care about them as much. Where did that influence come for you to really care about those little things?
Well, us coaches, we always think that, but over the course of the last few years, I think with social media, with videographers, with highlights, with TikTok, with all of that, I think those are big things in terms of a game winning shot or a really good dunk or a great around the back pass. And I just think that the longer you're in coaching, the more you realize that your best teams are the ones that do the simple things. It's very cliche. Every coach that I hate that anybody would even listen to this, but I just think that it's important that, having a positive attitude, catching the ball in triple threat, showing up on time, giving your teammate a high five, um, not being a complainer, just simple things I feel like are the most powerful things. And so we hear the Kobe Bryants and the Tim Grovers and the people that are very fashionable that say it now, or Inky Johnson, I think that's his last name. Um, but it's no different with any of our teams. Is that if we the the thing that I keep saying to my wife is that the teams that you say that to all the time that need to hear it, a lot of times don't end up doing it. And the teams that you say it a lot to, that you recruited or you were given players that do it well, you say it and you emphasize it, but they already do it anyways. And so, a lot of times who you are as a team is who they already are before they even show up. It's a decision and a lifestyle and a character that they already possess before you get your hour or two with them. And so we think, especially me as a younger coach and a younger head coach, I've been a head coach I've done it for 5 years, is that we think that our words matter, and they do. But I think it's so important that we think through the things that we're gonna be emphasizing in the winter time, that we really think through all those things in the spring and the summer, as far as who we retain and who we put on our team. And so our staff went above and beyond this last off season of thinking about those, who's going to be a guy that's going to do the little things, who's a guy that's going to have a positive attitude. The best coach, or I shouldn't say the best coach, because I love Kelvin Sampson and Tony Bennett, but I think you could make a case that Ben McCollum at Northwest Missouri State is the best coach in college basketball. He's won 4 of the last 5 or 4 of the last 6 national championships. I just think that he's not a friend of mine. We're in the same region. We were supposed to play them in the NCAA tournament when it got canceled. We've talked about scheduling. Anyways, he's not a friend of mine. I'm not saying this because we're buddies. I think he's the best of the best. And one of the things, I got him to agree to a phone call a few years ago to just tell me what he does with his job. And he said, and it stayed with me, is that there's a distinct difference between first and second place people. We all think of second place as we were almost first. And we've had a few first place teams, we've had a few third place teams here at OBU. And he said there's such a difference between a first place guy, a first place team, and a second place team. The gap is very large between first and second place. And one of the things that they hang their hat on is that he does not want moody guys. And so he challenged me on that phone call. I've done average with it. The first thing that I thought of is that I got to be less moody as a head coach. I need to be more stable. I feel like a Matt Driscoll or a Scott Drew is really good at that. They're really good at being the same every day. You could attest to that more than me. But
no doubt.
He really tried to hammer into my head that day. And I think it's just what he talks about with any coach that asks him for advice is, I don't do moody people. Like, I want upbeat, positive, outgoing, hardworking young men, and then we can figure out their basketball. And so I must have read that. If I've read it 100 times, I must have read it 1,000 times in the last 6 months. Put a nail or a hammer on my head the next time I take a moody guy. Take positive, upbeat guys, and then we can work on their basketball.
That's a good word. And I thought a lot about the ownership that you feel or you have as a college coach, the fact that you are choosing these guys that come in. If they have deficiencies in that area or any area, it is a little bit on you. You chose them. What's your advice to a high school coach where I don't necessarily choose the guys that come in the gym but we also want to have some of those same habits. It's funny you mentioned that, because this morning at second period athletics, we talked about enthusiasm is kind of what we're talking about this week, and energy vampires came up. John Gordon, and how, hey, you don't want to suck the life out of the gym. Don't be an energy giver. So I'm trying to work with them on that. But what's your advice to, instead of, we can't just say, hey, no, you guys get out of here. This is who God put in the gym. How do we make them better in those areas?
Well, us acting as head coaches, no matter what level it is, as if we're doing selecting, we are selecting to an extent, but the recruiting swings both ways. The kids are selecting too. So it's not that we just go out and just pick whoever we want. I mean, we're trying to see who's good enough, who we can get, who's gettable, who can visit, all the things that go into recruiting. But I understand the premise of your question. I think that positive peer pressure is powerful. The times when our team has been split halfway, as far as you have guys that could go positive habits, positive attitude, positive experience, and then you have they're kind of the middle ground. You have kids it doesn't matter where they would have gone, they would have played well, they would have had a good attitude. That's how they were raised. That's who they are. There's nothing like if anybody's watched that Netflix special of the Swamp Kings.
I'm on it right now. Yeah.
Okay. Tim Tebow would have had a high level of success wherever he would have gone. He's that type of dude. But there are many guys on that Florida team that ended up being a product of the people that they were around. And I know it's fashionable to talk about they had a bunch of players arrested. There's a bunch of players that got in trouble after they left the program. But if you really watch the documentary, and what I try to do when I watch documentaries is that we all view all of the Tim Tebows and the Marvin Harrisons and the Aaron Hernandez, the young man who got in a lot of trouble. We all try to view them through the lens of what we see of them today. But when you're watching that, try to do your best to try to put yourself in that environment. Like that was Urban Meyer, not in 2023. That's Urban Meyer in 2004, or whatever it is. And so just to watch that, and to watch those young men in the weight room, to watch those young men, they didn't know that they were going to be able to beat South Carolina or to beat LSU. And so Tim, just being who he was. Well, if you watched it and you listened, he was that way in high school. I mean, they showed a clip of him being in the huddle with his high school team, and it's no different than the huddle where he gets in the huddle with Florida that went viral, where he says, "Everybody get in here," and he's very passionate and has some anger and competitiveness. Well, they showed a clip on that documentary about how he was in high school. And so to answer your question about, I just think that your staffs, for a Division II coach, I'll have a staff of 4 this year, which will be the largest staff that we've ever had. Normally a Division II or an NEIA or a low Division I school will have 3 or 4 men that will be with the kids. So whoever those people are, those people need to be all in on, and they normally are, and your staff is no different in that way. But I do think there's something to the encouragement of a behavior is important, but I do think that there comes a time when you have to say, hey, we've talked about it. I've encouraged it. I've talked to your parents about it. You understand the why. That's not being adhered to today, and you've lost your opportunity this morning to be with the team. Now, you don't ever want to do that with a young man, but I do think that they have to know that playing time, uniforms, getting to travel, getting to be on the team is a privilege. Yeah. And so the dilemma that we all face as coaches is, and all the veteran coaches, and in my life, my veteran coaches are Richie McKay, Bob Hoffman, Kelvin Sampson. Those are the men that I work for, Dale Layer at Texas A&M. And so they all circle back to, are you going to enforce that rule or enforce that standard or enforce that value with your best player? And so that's the tricky part of having a culture of energy givers is what if your best player is not an energy giver?
Yeah.
How are you going to how are you going to handle that? And
Yeah.
so we would all like to say that there's no way, but you're probably going to work with that young man a little bit more than if it was your 15th man.
Yep. And I think a great point that you made was about the split in the locker room. Like, not that you're gonna. I mean, great. It would be great to have 100% buy-in. Pretty rare. I don't care what level you're at. Pretty rare. But you're right on the money. That positive peer pressure. If you could get 60, 75, 80%, some of your major stakeholders in the program on board, in line, saying the same thing, the same mission as you, that positive peer pressure, you're more likely to be able to bring those others up. So early on in the year, it's those individual meetings. It's not, and it's also getting the input of the players. Like, you guys want a championship environment. What are some ways that we can get there? Maybe you're leading them to what you want, but when they're making those decisions and they have more ownership, I think that percentage of people that do have buy-in is higher, might help bring the last 10, 15, 20%.
Yeah. And, the part about being a head coach that you're never prepared for, because normally normally an assistant that gets a head coaching job on some level, he's well liked in the profession, well liked by an AD, well liked by the players that have played for him, is that when you become a head coach, probably the worst part of the job is this principle of not every coach is for every player and not every player is for every head coach. And so I find that at times to be disheartening because our nature as a coaching profession is that we want to be the difference maker. We want to be, you know, as Coach Saban always says, is if you want to be well liked, go sell ice cream and all that. But the nature of us as coaches is we do want our players to want to be around us and want to come over to the house and like our family and like our children and like our wives and but the nature of what we do is that basketball, there's only 5 kids that get to be out there. And just because you put a certain amount of kids out there for so many minutes, there's times where it's not a fit for the player, it's not a fit for the coach. And so that's the part of being a head coach that I don't like.
Yeah.
Is you want to have 100, just like all the games, we want to win all the games. But I think as a coaching profession, I think if you were to really get inside the hearts and the minds of the coaching profession in basketball, or at least the coaches that I've been around, is they want it to work with every single player. And the fact of the matter is that it doesn't. It's
Yep.
not going to work with every single kid in your program. And those parents, not every parent is going to see the side of you that your wife or your AD or your president or we all have those players that we got pictures up in our office of graduations and weddings and all that. And not every player, it's going to end up in that way. And so I struggle with that a lot. I miss that part of being an assistant coach where, when it came to playing time and it came to discipline, and it came to complaining, that you could just kind of slide on out from that and just say, I know coach is on
Oh
one
man,
today.
I wish I could help you there. That's
Yeah. And so I do think that that's important this time of year because normally, like we had a workout yesterday. Normally, this time of year, you're in the gym, there's so much optimism, there's a lot of hope, there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of enthusiasm, or there is in our gym. And so I was home last night with my wife, and I just said, these games can do something to these relationships that coaches that are kind of the unintended consequences of the games because the kids are in the gym with you right now. They're not worried if like their parents didn't watch practice and they're not like when you get to the game, there are a lot of times there's a lot of traps for coaches. Well, I know that you said coach was spending time with you and that you liked him and you trusted him. Well, Well, if he really felt that way about you, then he would have played you more.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's not true of us as a coaching community. It's not. And so I'm trying to encourage myself, but those that are listening, I would just be an encouragement of that it goes on with everyone. Every coach is fighting that same battle. And I've had several older coaches and mentors to say, no matter what gets thrown back at you when it comes to the playing time portion of it, is that keep showing up for those kids anyways, because sometimes a kid may have to say something to a parent or a sibling or a friend that's really not how he feels about you in that moment. They know that it's fair. They
Yeah.
know that you love them. They do trust you, and the kids normally do know who the better players are. And so, but sometimes that's not really what they can say when mom or dad is getting after them. Like, well, I thought, I talked with coach last week and coach said that you're doing great. Well, is he lying to me? And those are awkward positions for a young person to be in. And so I don't like that part of our profession. I do know that it collides a lot with us, is that we're not solely in charge of just winning, but winning is a part of the business. And so we're trying to put our best foot forward as coaches and programs to win. And the relationship piece is getting harder and harder with the transfer portal and
I
with
bet.
the
Yeah.
I know the higher levels are dealing with the NLI or the did I say that right? My wife's always
NIL.
correcting.
Yeah.
Okay,
NIL. Yeah.
I always mess that up.
That's
But
okay.
yeah, and so keep showing up anyways, keep building relationships, and even if it's with a sophomore who doesn't end up becoming a junior in your program, he's going to be a junior somewhere.
Yep.
And so that rings a little hollow at times with coaches that feel like they're fighting for their livelihood, but I do think it's accurate in how God would want us to handle it.
Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Ballogy. Manage and measure your players' skill development and increase accountability year-round utilizing the Ballogy app. Boost inter-squad competition with drills backed by the National High School Basketball Coaches Association, including a 40-shot Ballogy skills assessment. Please visit ballogy.com/teams for information on how you can provide this resource for your team. Coach, I've been doing this for about 2 years now, a few hundred episodes, and I do think that might have been one of the most powerful moments or things that I've heard, because I feel like you really told the truth about what 99% of us really feel and think, but not many people talk about that. Not many people coaching is incredible. You and I both, like, at some point in our lives, we realized like this is our calling, and it is that for many people. And there are some amazing moments. There are some joyful moments where like you do have those big wins and big, and not just wins on the scoreboard, successes with your team. You go to some weddings and things like that, these just amazing lifelong relationships. But, behind me are I got this idea from Coach Broadhurst. I had him on 35 years at Randall, just finally made the state tournament after 35 years at the same place. But he has all of his team pictures right behind him. And I thought that's a pretty cool idea. But you know what the truth is, Coach? When I look back at those on each team, there's a large handful of those guys that I don't really think they liked me. I don't know if they had a positive experience. I don't know. I really don't. But, did they get the playing time they wanted? Probably not. Did the team win as much as they wanted? Or did they have the career they wanted? Probably not. Were their parents, if they looked at me right now, would they talk about the fond memories, or I'm an idiot? I think that's the truth. And I don't know where I got this from or where I heard it from, but I think we have to understand that there is a level of pain and a level of suffering that comes with this profession. But obviously, if we believe that it is for a higher purpose, that we're constantly planting seeds that we might not see that grow, and not reap that harvest right now, but that it will happen at some point. But I just really appreciate you sharing that, because I don't think a lot of coaches talk about that.
Yeah, I was a longtime assistant for 15 years. I was, as a player and as an assistant coach, I had every role in the program. I was, believe it or not, I'm going to throw this out first. I was a leading scorer on a team at one point in my childhood. If you had seen me play, I wasn't as good as you, but I've been the kid that set the bench. I've been the video coordinator. I've been the GA. I've been the operations. I've been the recruiting guy. I've been the player development guy. I've had every role on a basketball team possible. The only two roles when I stepped into this position that I've never had, and I'm still poor at this to this day, is that I had never been a head coach and I had never been hurt. So those are the two roles when I became a head coach that I had never been. I had been everything else. I had been the best player, the middle player, the walk on, the scholarship guy, the volunteer assistant, the highest paid assistant, I had done everything else. And so when we make mistakes, so I had, when you think about an apprenticeship, I don't know if that's the right word, but when you think about the preparation that went into becoming a leader, because we all think that we're leaders when we're in different roles, and then you find out when leadership is really on your shoulders is when something happens and you are the one that people are like, Coach, what decision, like, what are we running out of this timeout? What are we doing with this kid who he wasn't late, he wasn't on time, but he wasn't ready to go when you walked in the gym, like all those gray areas. And then you start stepping into what we all talk about and read about is leadership. And so what disappoints me is that when I've had 5 teams at OBU, when I look back and I see a situation that I could have handled better, bringing a younger player along, keeping an older player interested, getting a collective buy-in more days out of the year than not. And you know, sometimes when you get inside of conflict in coaching, no matter what comes out to the parent, the administrator, or the person in your program, us coaches, when we go back and we spend time by ourselves, which we normally during the season, it's a little harder to go to sleep. It's a little, you wrestle with things as far as game planning or relationship building or opponent scouting or practice preparation or just the things that you wrestle with during a basketball season of when to take a day off, when to practice, when to go 2-a-days, when to be encouraging, when to be challenging. Is that I got really discouraged at one point of now is really not the time to make mistakes. And what I'm learning is along this leadership path of the 5 years is sometimes you can be better at leadership and it not be reflected in your record. Sometimes you can not know what you're doing and the scoreboard just ends up on your side all the time. We had a year, my second year here, where it didn't matter what bad decisions I made along the way. The scoreboard was going to say OBU won by 1 point at the end of almost every game. We won, I don't know. We won all these close games. And so, you know, you kind of are like, you know what? We kind of know what we're doing, you know, these close games, and we practice this and we do that. And what you find out is that a lot of that is good fortune. And just because you handle a situation correctly within the context of your team, within the context of a family or a young person or a decision, and Coach Mo at Athletes in Action always talks about this, is that scoreboard can lie to you. The scoreboard will lie to you. Sometimes the scoreboard will say a negative result, and you did everything right that week. You handled everything right. The team was motivated. The team was prepared. They were anxious to play. And then other times, complete dysfunction is going on within the team. You have bad meeting after bad meeting. You think you have it all solved. You have a horrible shoot around, and then you win by 15 points. And you're like, well, maybe that's the cost of doing business. And so, you know, this whole leadership journey, it's a heck of a journey. It can be, you know, without my relationship with the Lord, I think that I would be buried underneath my bed of just being disappointed in not being perfect at it.
Yeah.
You know, because we're not. I mean, the game and the practices, like yesterday we were in the gym. I think the NCAA gave us a little less than an hour. I mean, from the minute that we started to when it finished, I don't even remember all the things that I said or taught. I know that we were very prepared as a staff, but that thing went really quick.
Yeah.
And the games go that quick, and the October will go that quick. And so you're having to make so many different communications and interactions. And then sometimes when you're like yesterday, we've had a young man. He's a wonderful player. This kid from Pinson Valley High School in Birmingham, Alabama. So right before he got here, his dad is the assistant coach, and you may have seen this on social media, but their point guard at their school tragically died on the court the week before he came to OBU. He's the number 1 or number 2 rated point guard in the state of Alabama. He had a wonderful summer. They were 28-0 at one point last year. Terry Connor is the young man. Junior is the kid in our program, but Caleb White is the kid who passed away. So of course, since they've gotten here, we've got him connected with counseling. We've checked in on him. I've been in communication with his coach, his family, just making sure he's okay. So after we worked out yesterday, I naturally went over and sat down with them and spent some time with them and was like, hey, man, you're okay? Like, thinking about you. Hey, me and Meredith are over at the house. Hey, what do you got going on tomorrow? And I spent probably 10 minutes with him after the workout. Not that I deserve anything. It's what any coach, any adult would do and should do. But every time that you're spending time with a young person on your team means you're not spending time with another person that needs you. And so, I'm kind of resigned to the fact of scheduling those type of things.
Nice.
And I just am like, and I think the people that you've been around are absolutely phenomenal at this. It's, Coach Driscoll, I keep referencing him because one of our OBU kids went and played for him at North Florida, and him and Coach Hoffman and Coach McKay. Anyways, I've kind of grown up knowing him, not because of Baylor, but just because of the circles and actually him being at North Florida. And so I feel like those guys are great at that. But even a guy like Scott Drew, he can't be everything to every person.
Nope.
And so us coaches, like I've got 2 assistants that are here. My 3rd assistant comes during the season. And so as I sat there and spent 15 minutes with Terry, well, there's probably several of the new kids or the returners on my team that could have really benefited from a word of encouragement from Coach Hollis or Coach Kyler or myself that I wasn't able to get to. And so I probably think that I probably spent the time with the kid that I needed to yesterday, but you can't get to everybody and you can't be all things to every player, but I sure would love to be. I would love to be. And then when you think about the needs of our players and the mental health of our players and the mental health of our staffs, you have the whole other side of it is, am I getting that person ready for when we play Oklahoma State? Am I getting the competitor in them ready to absorb that and be able to be triumphant in that? And so I think preparation is important when you go to practice. I think preparation is important. Like, people joke around about Coach Saban, that Coach Saban doesn't talk to anybody or go to dinner with anybody unless he has an itinerary about what to talk about and what to do. But even a man like that, he's got to be willing to, when he gets up to the office and things are happening during the day, I feel like as a Christian, just my own background and my own faith is that I when I'm really plugged into my faith is, Lord, just use me however I'm needed. Let me be a small part of someone on our team solving something today, and don't let me take this thing too serious, because it is just basketball.
Coach, so much to unpack there. A lot of good things. I think your last point I'll hit first, which is your foundation. I think the danger in what we're doing, or it could be anybody, it could be your athletes, the fact that basketball becomes the main thing in their life, the thing that they worship. Yeah. It could be our jobs. It could be even our spouse at times, or any relationships that are in our lives. I think anytime that we start to feel that overwhelming feeling of this is too much, there's too much pressure, whatever you're doing, it probably is in control. And I think one of the dangers of coaching, especially, is that the wins could be notoriety for some. It could be being liked for others. It could just be having a successful program. When that starts to build up so much that you really forget who's your identity, like who is your foundation. When you forget that, man, that's where I trip up. And that's when I start to neglect my wife. That's when I start to forget about the relationships with these players. And that's what's most important. And I think so. I think you nailed it right there. The biggest thing is that you rip open our chest. Our foundation cannot be, our self-worth cannot be wrapped up in this game, or else we'll be found wanting.
I think a benefit for me, I don't wish this upon anyone, but I've heard older coaches say that it's a necessity. Coach Popovich, I've heard Coach Sampson say this, is that I was fired at a really young age, and basketball was the coaching profession. Now, me as a player, I had a lot of different experiences and a lot of different coaches in college, but from the moment that I got into coaching at the Division I level, things really lined up for me. Anyways, my story's been well talked about. I got involved in some things that I shouldn't, got fired at a young age. And so having something taken from you, like coaching, because coaching can be a form of, like what you said, like building a good program. I don't personally struggle with that part of it. There's many things I struggle with, but I think having coaching taken from me at a young age and how painful that was, and having to go through all those days of, how do they say it? What you do is not who you are, and all that world. Having to go through that in my early 30s, I think was really healthy for me, because Tony Bennett is famous for a lot of things, but one of the many things that he says that really resonates is that you take any of these jobs that we have and don't hold them with a closed fist. Hold them, they always tell us to hold our golf club. Don't, Jack Nicklaus said, don't hold the club really tight. Like when I get out there and play, I'm not any good, but I hold on to that thing really tight. And Coach Bennett, I don't know if he told this to me personally or I read it. I've been around him some. He said, the one thing he did tell me to my face when I went and spent some time with their staff a couple years ago is he pointed out to the court and he just said, Jade, don't get all caught up in that. He said, it not only will disappoint you, he said, it's disappointed me many times. And this is after his national championship. This is after that story that's been well chronicled where they got beat by UMBC, and then a lot of that staff and team came back and they won it. And everybody knows how all of us feel about, as a Christian coach, you have a Bob Hoffman, a Scott Drew, you have a Matt Driscoll, a Grant McCaslin. You have some awesome guys, a Richie McKay at the top of our industry. But I don't know that if you can put a more perfect model for a 10 with the basketball, a 10 with their faith, than a Tony Bennett.
Yeah.
And if Tony Bennett is going to tell us as a young coaches, Christian coaches that want to do right, that the basketball is going to disappoint you a lot, I think it would be very wise on our part to take his advice, and to not hold these jobs or hold these positions or hold these careers so tightly. That, hey, this is where I'm at today. I'm at OBU. I love it. If this was taken from me today, I would definitely go home and cry, and be sad, because I love being here. I have a lot invested in this program.
But it's not your identity. It's not your identity.
I would be able to move on. I would be able to move forward. Me and Isaac and Meredith would be fine. One of the mistakes that I did make, on a lighter note, when I was at Liberty before I got fired, was I don't think I owned a piece of clothing that didn't have Liberty on it. So when I got fired, I did have to go to Ross and TJ Maxx to have some shirts to wear.
What am I gonna wear? That's it. On another lighter note, not many people know this about me, but my first job was at Abercrombie and Fitch. And when I was not the shirtless model in the front. They never asked me to do that. But when I was a manager there after playing overseas, I came back. I had without basketball, I had no clue what I wanted to do. So I did that for about a year and a half. Got out of that to get into some type of basketball and coaching, and realized, like you, I have nothing but Abercrombie and Fitch clothing. And so, yeah, anyway, very random. I'll probably cut that out. But so one question I had for you. You mentioned all of the decisions that you have to make and all of the things that you say. I really appreciate, and I think we all have to, I don't know what the percentage is, but just already prepare for 5 to 7% of what we do and say to be wrong, to be mistakes. And maybe that's a too low of an estimate, but like all of the things that you say to your team in those meetings with one-on-one, two guys, we're walking away, we're in the huddle. There's going to be a small percentage that, golly, that was off. We have to own it. We have to own it. We have to be prepared for that. So with that being said, how much of it, because you mentioned you have to be organized and prepared with decisions that you make, with practice plans, days off, how much of it is organized? And then how much too are you just going off of feeling and flow throughout? Like, what, I don't know, hard to maybe have a percentage there, but what do you think?
Well, I've had different models, unbelievable models. When you think about a Bob Hoffman, a Kelvin Sampson, a Dale Layer, and a Richie McKay, for the four guys that I worked for, all of them handled that differently. Like everyone on your podcast, all of my older coaches that are mentors that I worked for always told me to be myself. So me being myself in preparation is to be very prepared for a workout, be very prepared for a week, be very prepared. Coach Sampson's great at explaining to a lot of us younger coaches of what do you need to get done in October, and he'll chop it down to transition D, your base D, and he'll build these pillars as to what you need to, pick and roll coverage, your transition D, how many people you're sending to the glass, how many people you're sending back. Coach Layer, similar to Buzz Williams, who he works for, is a meticulous practice planner where he'll have it down to the minute, down to the drill, down to what manager and pad. And I mean, it will be very meticulous. Coach Hoffman, there were some years where we'd have practice plans, and then other years he was either keeping those to himself or he was going off a feel. I personally think this is not his words. This is me working for him for 7 years. I think he's at his best when he's not on the fly, because it's hard to say a man like that is going based off of feel when there's probably not that many minutes out of the day where he's not thinking about his team. He's not thinking about what he wants to run. He's not thinking about a motivational conversation. Like, he's constantly, like, the best coaches, they don't have a lot of balance in terms of what's going on in their mind. They may have a balance in terms of how much you see them in their office, but they don't have a lot of balance in terms of, like, I got to live with Bob Hoffman 2 different times. We were assistants together. No, he was an assistant. I was the water boy at OU. We were both on staff together. And then I worked for him at 2 other schools, at Texas Pan American and also Mercer. Is that even if we're eating dinner and I was living with him as a younger coach and we're watching an NBA game, he's writing something down or writing something down in his mind. So he was more of like our volleyball coach here. She's an excellent coach. She doesn't really come into practice with a written down plan. I always have a skeleton in my pocket. I can't even remember that many times of ever looking at it, but I think just going over the skeleton of it, I do think as a coaching community, we forget how much time we've already thought about all these things when it's like, man, what are we going to say when the team, and then you get out to practice and all the things that you're not allowed to always say around your wife because she doesn't want to talk about basketball all the time. You get to finally talk about basketball. Like I get to talk about basketball today at 3 o'clock. And so we always have plenty to say. I'm kind of at that point now where what I was discussing with you before we got on this podcast is that I've been a little different each year as far as whether or not I'm going to introduce individual drills, individual habits, because we're in a 4 hour a week segment and I introduced the whole this week. And I was okay with not talking as much, not blowing the whistle as much, and letting them play and figuring out what they're good at. And I think the veteran coaches, I think the best coaches are the ones that don't stop it as much as us younger coaches. Now they're the thing that the veteran coach has that a guy like me doesn't have is that when I walk in the gym, people are like, "Hey, there's Jay." When Tony Bennett or Bob Hoffman walks in the gym, it's like, "Oh, coach is here." So I'm still establishing those lines as to, hey guys, I am get to be the coach this year. But I over these last few days, I've let them play more. I've been more open minded into instead of going into the year saying, I already have so and so in this spot or that spot.
Yeah.
Like I gave a forward yesterday the ball. We were at half court. I was letting the boys play. I gave the forward the ball. Like we have actions that we run. I'm definitely in terms of who am I truly a son of or a nephew of in coaching, it probably would be Bob Hoffman. Certainly on offense, is that we'll call stuff. What even if it's a simple quick hitter, we want to be organized on offense. I do that to a fault, but when you're around a guy that's been so successful, and
Sure.
I learned a lot from him in that way. Is that I gave a forward. He's closer to a center than he is a point guard. I gave him the ball and he was the point guard for like 2 possessions. And it didn't go particularly well, but I wouldn't have done that any other year, but this year I just wanted to see how he looked. I wanted to see what happened. I wanted to see if I liked it. I wanted to see if maybe even if it didn't look good, if that was something that I wanted to work on as we move forward in the year. And it be more of this time of year of a fact finding mission than I want to show everyone that I'm the coach.
I do think you're right on the money with there's this maybe kind of a magic spot or a balance that you can get with practice planning of obviously having a plan. And like you said, having a plan could be written out to the minute. There's nothing wrong with that. But
Nope.
having a plan could also be just the amount of times that you've gone over the skeleton or the progression that you want your guys to go through. That's a plan. And then, but I do think the other side of the danger of having timed out things is that you don't live in the moment and you don't seize some of those opportunities to go deeper in an area, to explain a little bit more. Or, you know what, guys, we got this. Let's move on. Let's go to the next progression. To me, I want to have that skeleton, the idea of where we want to get, but I'm going to have the freedom to spend as much or as little time in every area. Or like TJ Rosine at Emmanuel, to me is one of the best culture building coaches out there.
It's excellent.
But he doesn't have a culture building moment programmed into his. He's constantly on the lookout for it. A guy dives on the floor, we're going to stop and celebrate that because that's the type of habit, and that's the thing. Having your eyes open for that, I feel like you have that ability if you're not staring at it the time and hoping, we're a minute over. We're going a little bit more off of feel. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I'll give you a big boy example on that. Is that if Coach Sampson is doing anything defensively, his program is built off of toughness, rebounding, defense, and then taking care of the ball. That's what Kellen and Coach always talk about as their holy trinity. Is that if he's doing something defensively, now if it's in the 4 hour segment, he's going to follow the rules and take care of all that. But he's not moving forward with his practice until that's right. Like he's not going to be a slave. Coach Hoffman's not that way. I haven't worked for Coach McKay in a while. But the meticulous attention to detail is going to be there. And attitude is a part of it. Like just because a kid does a habit the correct way for Kelvin Sampson, if he's they play in the gap, which a lot of people don't know, they're so aggressive and so tough and so efficient and disruptive on defense. And then of course everybody knows their program to be such a great rebounding program, is that the defense and the rebounding, he is so far advanced in what it is that he does, is that it's an attitude more than anything that he's looking for. He's looking for them to be in the right spots, but if he sees his team with the right attitude, and it's not always as pretty as I'm saying it here. Like he's looking for a nastiness and a chippiness and a pridefulness that when it comes to, I am in the gap, but I'm in the gap in a way that, if he were playing against Harden Simmons, we'd just set the ball down and run back the other way. Like he's looking for that. And when he gets that, he'll move on. But until he gets that, he's willing to do anything within the rules of being an adult and being a coach. He's willing
all the way up to that line, all the way.
He's willing to do anything and everything to get that attitude of a championship defense and rebounding as he sees fit before he's going to move on to 2-line shooting or a fast break drill or 5-on-5 live. He's not moving on. And so that stubbornness, I think, exists. And, Tony Bennett and Kelvin Sampson, if you were to go to dinner with either one of them, they're both awesome guys. They're both fun to be around. And if you were to put Richie McKay in there and Bob Hoffman, all those guys are so different. I mean, so different. Just in how they relate to me, how they relate to one another, just their vibe. But I tell you, the one thing that all great coaches have, in my opinion, is a stubbornness in getting the things that they want. And I think even as smiley and you would even not goofy would not be the word, but for a while, a lot of us in the profession are like, man, Scott Drew might be too nice to win a championship. Like Coach Self can get a little after you in a shoot around, but Coach Drew Coach Drew, I mean, when have we ever not seen him with a smile and a warm welcome? And like, he's not trying to put you on edge as a bystander or like, he doesn't coach that way. That's not how he leads. But even him, the stubbornness that his team showed now many teams, he's had a lot of great teams.
Yeah.
But I feel like all great coaches have great stubbornness in the things that matter to them.
Coaches, the Jamodi podcast is powered by Shoot 360. The future of basketball has arrived in Dallas-Fort Worth. Shoot 360 combines the latest sports technology with the fundamentals of basketball skill development. The result is a one-of-a-kind video game-like basketball program designed to improve your shooting, dribbling, and passing. Visit shoot360dfw.com to learn more and register for your free 1-hour workout evaluation. Shoot 360, the future of basketball is here.
I love that point right there. I think that might be the art of coaching. That because you
when to be stubborn.
Yeah, because anybody can go online and find a practice plan. I could go online right now and pick Hubie Brown, one of his practice plans. I'm sure it's out there and it's all timed, and I could just go right down it. And a lot of people would watch that and be like, golly, it flowed, it really moved well. But was I taking the time, one, to know myself well enough? What am I really looking for? Rick Torbett said it takes you 10 years to figure out who you are as a coach. And I don't know if that's exact, but for me, it feels about right there. I mean, 6 years an assistant, 4 or 5 years messing up horribly as a head coach until I started to maybe figure it out, still learning, obviously. But I think the art of coaching is knowing what you're about and being willing to be stubborn and stick with moments, but then not so stubborn with your plan that you're just going to waste time. I'll tell you this. I had last night, I recorded with Art Briles. And the reason I've got Art Briles on, because I'm not a big football guy. I love the Cowboys. I couldn't tell you much of what's really happening on there, and I'll try to fake it a little bit, but I don't know much about it. But when he was at Baylor, the fast football
Yeah,
style they played,
unbelievable.
a lot of coaches had told me to go watch his practices. I never got to, and so I was just thinking of guys to have on it, and he came up. And everything that you're talking about, that's exactly what he was. He was like, as soon as we've got it and I feel good about it, we're going to move on. We're not just going to stay in something. I wonder if that's really a difference maker for some coaches in their practice planning with culture, with anything is their stubbornness to stick in an area that we haven't got yet. And we're not going to go on until we get this. Or then also the awareness of, you know what? I feel good about this. Let's move on. Maybe that's
The
something.
the platinum elite, like last layer of Hall of Fame level coaches is this point, and I wanted to share this on your podcast, is the stubbornness of what you want to. You can only pick two or three things that you're going to be amazing at. Like, coach, like I said, Coach Sampson would be toughness, rebounding, defense, taking care of the ball. That's their program. Now, there's a lot of things they work on, but that's who they are. A Bob Hoffman program is going to be execution is going to be somewhere up there. The type of teammate you are is going to be up there. Everybody knows when you're in his program. Everybody knows the important things. For Coach Bennett and Coach McKay, it would be the humility, the servanthood, the defense, the pack line, the getting a quality shot, and all that. But what I've found with those guys that are getting to the end of their career where they're really figuring out, they're mastering the art of coaching, is that they're known for their stubbornness. Like everybody knows all the stories of how many people try to get Tony Bennett to go zone at different times. And he's like, look, I don't care if we're getting beat. We're not going zone. Like we're playing man. This is what we do. And like, no matter how many times somebody wants to tell Kelvin Sampson that, hey, coach, when we put that bubble on the thing, we could get somebody could get hurt. He's like, we got to be who we are, like we're going to ride or die with the rebounding. Is that last level of stubbornness that those guys have is that they circled almost all the way back to where when you think about that UMBC loss, the coach he's at VCU now, Coach Odom. Coach Odom was the coach, right, of UMBC.
Mm-hmm.
So they got them in a couple actions where they just kept running over and over again and they just kept touching the paint over and over. They figured out a cheat code to the pack line and they were playing, the ACC has bigger fours and bigger fives. And so they were running around and basically playing against five guards. So the thing that Coach Sampson and Coach Bennett and Coach McKay will do now is that they are willing to make that one adjustment. And so we all, as a younger coach, always think about adjustments in terms of every halftime. I'm like, what do we need to do? We need to start trapping. We need to go to zone. I'm willing to make any adjustment at any point, at any time during the game to help us win by 1 point. And so whenever we talk about a Coach Bennett or a Coach Sampson adjustment that they make at halftime or in a timeout, it's very well documented. They normally will mention it in a press conference. It will normally be shown on video. Hey, the next year UVA would occasionally switch a 1-4 ball screen, which Dick Bennett and Tony would have never done before the UMBC loss. And so it got widely talked about and widely viewed and like, man, what a master adjuster. But the essence of the attention that it got is it was born out of their stubbornness. I've gotten caught up in my head coaching journey of wanting it to be more about that instead of being us being a product and a program and a habit filled like working group of my stubbornness of the thing. Like I haven't even established my stubbornness for an adjustment to even matter. And so let's get good at something before you can even adjust off of that. And they're so good to where, like, if coach were to send if Coach Sampson were to go into a game and only send two people to the offensive glass, it would change the complexion of the game. Like, let's say that he played Steve Nash's sons, and for whatever reason, him and the staff got together. They would never do this. I mean, he's going to send five to the glass before he would ever send two. They're going to crawl on the glass. Like, no matter how many great shooters he has, if you listen to him talk every fall, he's always sending out that message. Hey, we're not a first shot team. We're second shot team. We're third shot team. And he could have like five guys that shoot 40% from three, but that's just what he does. They're going to, at OU, Indiana, at Houston, they're going to, Washington State, my man's like, they're going to get 20 offensive rebounds.
Yeah, yeah.
And so if he were to ever go into an NCAA tournament game, and I bet there's been some moments where he might have done this, is that he were not to send four to the glass, it would change the whole direction, because all that, if Baylor is about to play a Houston team for that 4 days, a Kentucky or a Baylor or a Texas Tech, all they're talking about with Houston is we got to box out. We got to box out. We got to box out, because that's his stubbornness. Everybody knows what his teams are known for. And so the tricking opponents, hey, I'm all for tricking people. I like that. Like, I don't want people to have a beat on what we're doing. But the best coaches are the ones that are, hey, this is what we're doing. Like, we're better at that than whatever you get to prepare for 3 days. This is what we do year round. This is our whole, when we wake up in the morning, all we're talking about is rebounding for 365 days a year. And so you can do the box out drills all you want, but Houston's getting 20 offensive rebounds. They just are.
The word I'm thinking about, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just think that I'm reminding myself, having a conversation with you, because we're recording this podcast on the front end of all of our seasons, is that your stubbornness, and then as you're stubborn, are you stubborn on things that are going to show up? Yeah. And are your players capable of doing the things that you want to be stubborn about?
I think a fun exercise would be, especially once you've established some habits a few weeks, maybe a month in, or it could even be maybe with culture too, is ask your players, what are we stubborn about? As a program, as a team, what are we going to be stubborn about this year? And maybe give it up to them to, what are some things that are important to them? And again, it doesn't just have to be with basketball. Yeah, but I think it's important for your players to know what you're stubborn about. Yeah, other coaches can watch a team play. And I think the word I kept thinking about was identity. Like, I watched some teams play and I realized, golly, I just don't know. Like, I don't know what they're about. What are they trying to actually accomplish? I would hope teams watching us is, we're trying to get the best shot as fast as possible. And we're okay with taking threes in transition, but they're still good shots from our scale. We're not just taking bad shots, but I mean, that has to be something we're going to shoot courageously. Like, that needs to be something that people understand it's our identity. But it'd be interesting to see, do your players know what you're stubborn about, what you truly want to see every day from them? And also, like, what we want more buy-in. There are part of our stakeholders in our program. What are they stubborn about? I think that'd be a fun activity.
I'll tell you, one of the things that I noticed yesterday is, and they took the wind out of my sails with doing this, is that we're really big on, when somebody when we have posters and pictures in the office, and we spend a lot of time on social media or whatever, is that when a teammate goes to the ground, we pick them up. Whenever we're talking as a team, we want to touch a teammate, have an arm around a shoulder. If we're in a timeout, if someone does good, if there's children or different people in the gym, like just basic culture standards that we have, is that when you have the right kids in your program, these things that you want to be about, like we had two guys go down on the court yesterday, and our guys ran over there and picked them up. Well, they kind of stole my thunder, because I wanted to tell them, hey, this is what, and they did it naturally. And then when us coaching staff, when we were telling them the schedule for the rest of the week, we're doing some community service or whatnot, they all were touching each other, and they all were like linking up with each other. And they stole my thunder again, is that this was the week that I was going to tell them that this is what they were going to do. is that when you have the right people in your program, they instinctively are going to do a lot of the culture things on their own. And then when you're able to force the behavior of people that really don't want to do, like the best programs are the ones that the things that the coach is stubborn about, like we're really stubborn about cheering for your teammates. Like I'll kick a kid off the team if he doesn't. Now, I won't kick a kid off the team for the first time,
Yeah.
but if you don't want to cheer for your teammate, you ain't going to fit in here. Like you're just not. And so it's important to me. I thought it was important to me as an assistant, but as a head coach, like when the kids are out there playing, if these guys aren't into the game, like it ruins it. I don't care what's going on the court. And we could lose and our whole team be into it. And there's a level of fulfillment and
Yeah.
satisfaction that I have of that we are at least on the pathway or the journey of becoming a team. And so that stuff I think we all figure out as leaders of the things that are important to us. Sometimes it's important. The most important thing to a coach is winning. Sometimes the most important thing to a coach is having the most talent. Sometimes the most important thing to a coach is running the best stuff on offense. That's really important that it looks a certain way. I've found for me, one of the most important things is that we're all on the same page about a few things. And one of them being is that we're going to cheer for each other. And I'll kick the best player off the team over that. Luckily I've never had to. But that's important. I want the boys to cheer for each other because I think that that's regardless of the philosophical ramifications of why it's important for them later on, it's important to me today. Like I just care about that. I want to cheer for people.
The speed round. These are going to be quick questions. The first thing that pops in your head, if anybody thinks they know you, they're really going to know you after this.
Okay.
Ready?
Lord. Yeah.
Favorite ice cream flavor?
Mint chocolate chip.
Same. Nice, coach. That's good. I felt, yeah. Greatest shooter of all time?
Steph.
You hesitate. You took a breath.
Because I love Larry Bird.
That's fair. Yeah.
But Steph has surpassed him off the dribble.
No, just change. Yeah. It's incredible. Best basketball movie of all time?
Hoosiers.
Texting or talking?
Texting. I hate talking on the phone.
It's fair. For high school, shot clock or no shot clock?
Shot clock.
Thanks, coach. You know, in Texas, we're still there. Wow. There's one classification, SPC, that is starting to Cassidy up in Oklahoma. They're at SPC school. I think. Yeah. I think there still are. But they're getting one, or they had one last year, and so we're hoping. But favorite holiday?
Christmas.
You're up 3 on defense with 7 seconds left. Do you foul or no
Not
foul?
Fouling.
Wow.
Not fouling.
Okay. Pretty strong there. What book would you give someone?
Besides the Bible, yep. The Winter Within by Pat Riley.
Nice.
You read that one?
I haven't. No, but I create a book list. Some off of this question, others like after I have somebody on, I'll ask them. And golly, we're up to it's like a 3-page list right now. I try to put it out every Friday. I've missed probably the last 6 Fridays, so I can't say that I do that. But I'll add that to it. Name one bucket list item you still need to do.
Win a national championship at OBU.
I love that. All right. If you take
it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Sir. Yes, sir. If you take in caffeine, how do you take it?
I'm a Coke addict, and I'm getting better.
Normal Coke, Diet Coke, Coke Zero.
Normal.
What do you normal?
None of that.
Yeah, none of that weak stuff. Last one. In basketball, who's the GOAT?
Jordan.
You said that with conviction.
Yeah, like it's not even a no. Who else would you put up there? Kareem?
Yeah. I'm a Jordan guy. I'm a Jordan guy. Oh yeah. I mean, not just because the era that you and I kind of grew up in, you know. in the 90s watching those Bulls teams. But I think if you watch The Last Dance, it's just hard not to. But I think it does depend a lot on that era that basketball was big for you, that you grew up in. I think a lot of people make their decisions based on that. The kids nowadays, so a lot of them go LeBron, and he has a great. I think if I asked my high school team right now, it'd be split probably more between LeBron, Kobe, even than Jordan. But
yeah, LeBron's career numbers can't, but as far as who's the best,
yeah,
the prime, if you go prime LeBron, prime MJ, those are two crazy, crazy players. But I think we underestimate like how strong LeBron was and is, and how fast Jordan was.
yeah, wow, yeah.
Like when you watch the younger MJ get out on the break, I mean AI is the guy to where TV didn't do him justice. If you ever watched Allen Iverson in person, the players would be moving at one speed and he would be moving at another speed. Like he hit the genetic lottery. But Jordan's speed, and then his body was, it looked a certain way, but man, the strength that he had playing the game, not just after he built his body up in the second three-peat, but even in the first three-peat on the come up, just like, I'm not even talking about when he lived in the mid post. I'm just talking about his overall strength.
Yep.
And then the thing that I always appreciated him, like I don't think LeBron's that greater of a passer than MJ. I think they're both really good passers.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've been able to see LeBron's more because he's played with so many. MJ really only played in the isolation system of Doug Collins, and then he played in the triangle with Phil.
Yeah.
So there's only two. We've gotten to see the exposure of basketball. We've gotten to see LeBron, both Cleveland's, the Miami, the LA. We've gotten to see him in all USA basketball. We've gotten to see him in so many different moments where we've gotten to see everything. That year where Jordan played the point for Doug Collins and averaged 10 or 11 assists, well, none of us really saw many of those games.
That's true. Yeah.
I mean, I had WGN, so I got to see a lot, but that was after they had gotten through Detroit. And so I would pick MJ all day over LeBron. Some of that is preference, but I just don't think there's, that pull up. LeBron could get stuck at times, but the thing about LeBron getting stuck is that he never did get stuck in his prime. He's going to his right hand and you can't stop it. And the people that tried to stop it. So when people talk about one-on-one, I think Kobe would be more of a one-on-one partner with Jordan. But if you're just talking about the greatest player of all time, I think that prime LeBron is a hell of a. I do think that he's in the category with MJ, but he's not. For me, he's not. But he is right. Like when you go back, they had JJ Redick had someone on the podcast that had played against LeBron in every phase. And the question that got posed to the podcaster, who was a really established NBA player, forget who it was. I think it was Al Horford. What's the best LeBron? And he said the last 2 years in Miami, the first 2 years back in Cleveland was the best LeBron ever played. And then when you hear Brad Stevens talk about just going up against them, when he was the Celtics coach. And so I don't think that there's any distinction between the two as far as I think Jordan is clearly one, LeBron is clearly two. But there's a lot of people. I don't count Isaiah or any of those opinions are all biased and born out of hate. But some of the people that are just sitting down trying to analyze it, like I feel like Charles Barkley tries to see it for what it is.
He's my favorite commentator besides Jeff Van Gundy out there. Yeah. I think he just tells it like it is. And you really.
Or how he sees what he thinks is the truth.
Yeah, but I mean, it's true. But I do think, too, it's like, with all of his experience in playing and watching these different eras happen, his opinion to me does ring true quite often.
Yeah, when he's not goofing around,
no doubt.
He's way more intelligent than
Yes.
people give him credit for when it comes to basketball.
Yeah, that's right. Coach, this has been so much fun, and I've been excited to have this time because I got to sit in the gym and just watch you work for, golly, it was 6 or 8 hours a month or so ago. But just to hear more about, and I really appreciate how you got into some of the realities of coaching that we just don't talk about quite a bit, and then the mastery of it too. This was just an awesome time.
Well, thanks for having me. Hopefully, we can get you back for a game, and hopefully, I can get to a game of you guys. So
Man, I'd be honored.
How long of a drive was it?
I think it was about 2.5, 2:45. Like, it wasn't bad.
Really?
I mean, maybe it was 3, but it wasn't a bad drive. My son slept the whole time, so no, it was great. And I would be honored to have you. I'd love to come up and watch you guys play. If there's anybody that, maybe something that you said that they wanted to talk more about, what would be a good way for them to get in touch with you?
Well, my email address is on our website, and then I do Instagram, Twitter. A lot of coaches, a lot of players I connect with on Instagram, but a lot of coaches connect with me through Twitter.
Yeah.
You can just type in my name. Our practices are always open. We never have a closed practice. So anybody, we always have a lot of different coaches that swing by this time of year to watch practices, and then we try to get out. Our staff tries to get out to as many practices as we can during this time of year too, just as you kind of know what you want to do. But I just think I think as a coaching profession, we're all a little paranoid this time of year of, are we going hard enough? Are we working on the right thing? And like, the last thing that I'll say from a basketball standpoint that has been really helpful for me the last few years is on my whiteboard here in my office is I keep the pillars of just basketball. All this stuff that you talk about and we all can get lost in is culture and thankfulness or standards of our program. But when it comes to just basketball, the rebounding, the offensive execution, transition D, pick and roll coverage, any zones, base on out of bounds, side out, I keep a running list. I keep all those pillars on my board, and whenever I touch one of those, I make sure that I make a note of it on my board. Because sometimes we wake up 4 weeks, 4 weeks will go by, and you'll be like, you know what? We haven't done any defensive rebounding, or we've done that every day. Or my first year as a head coach, and I'm ashamed to say this, is that we had worked on everything, and we played a flawless first game. We played Washburn, which is an excellent program with Brett Ballard, and they scored third. We lost at the buzzer or in overtime, and I thought we did everything extremely well. I thought we were well coached. We gave up 35 points in transition, and we got back to the office, and we did not have that list, and we had never worked on that in a practice. We had never done transition defense, and so it's like, get back. And it's like, well, the kids had never worked on that in a practice. Yeah. And so the older coaches, they all have a rolling Rolodex in their minds of what they want to build their team with. But for us younger guys, I think it's good to just make sure, like, we think that we have knocked out base on out of bounds, but it's like, before you play your first scrimmage, you want to have 1 or 2 base on out of bounds plays in. So I would keep it doesn't even have to be something that's super detailed. Just make sure that you're touching those pillars along the way, because you can't be good at everything.
Good nugget, Coach. Man, this was awesome. And I just want to say again, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the Jamodi Podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.